Under Alex Anthopoulos, the Atlanta Braves have always spent big on the bullpen. They'll have to do that again this year, and I'm going to tell you how they're going to do it on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. Also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X, Locked On Braves on Instagram, and TikTok, and wherever else you're on social media. Locked On Braves is there, giving you the latest news and updates throughout this offseason. If you're listening on the YouTube, yeah, I just said that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. If you're listening on the audio side, you're going to help out as well. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for your support here of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your very first listen of each and every day. A big shout out to all my everydayers out there. We're getting close to having some exciting news for some of you who would like to take your everyday membership to the next level. So look out for that in the coming weeks. Today's episode in Locked On Braves, we're going to take a look at the bullpen. There are a lot of holes to fill in this bullpen. Alex Anthopoulos has generally spent big on the bullpen, as big as anybody else in baseball. He'll need to do that again this offseason. He had a comment today kind of speaking to that we'll touch on, and the coaching staff is finalized. So we'll talk about that as well. A good bit to get to on today's episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. When the Atlanta Braves decided not to pick up the options of Tyler Kinley and Pierce Johnson, it confused a lot of us on here. It felt like pretty good deals at pretty good values for pretty good pitchers. But when that happened, it obviously created 2 more holes in the bullpen, and there were already 2 holes in the bullpen before that. So you're looking at an offseason now where the Atlanta Braves have a lot of work to do in the bullpen, when it was the one area, not just the one, there were several areas last offseason that got neglected, but definitely the most glaring one going into last season was the bullpen. With the loss of A.J. Minter in free agency and the injury to Joe Jimenez, neither of those guys were replaced, and the Braves suffered because of it. Now, it wasn't the only reason. The offense being terrible in the first half definitely played a big part in that, but certainly the bullpen not taking care of that in the offseason, not building up the depth there, didn't help either. So it's going to be a big offseason for Alex Anthopoulos to make sure that doesn't happen again. And generally in the past, and even in 2025, he is one of the biggest spenders when it comes to the bullpen. So just very quickly looking back at the last several seasons, in 2025, Iggy made 16, Jimenez made $9 million, Pierce Johnson made 7, Aaron Bummer 3.5 as they restructured that deal. You brought over Tyler Kinley, and in the time he was here, paid him almost $1.3 million. Dylan Lee made just over $1 million. Total for that group, around $40 million. They had a team bullpen ERA of 4.19, which was 19th best in baseball. So not great results-wise for the bullpen last year, but still spent a good bit of money on that bullpen group. Just unfortunate that Jimenez was never healthy last season. In 2024, Iggy once again made 16, Jimenez 8, Pierce Johnson 7, AJ Minter 6.2, Aaron Bummer 5.5. You had Luke Jackson, you paid him $2.1 million. So the bullpen in 2024 made over $45 million combined. I'm only including the guys that made more than $1 million. Obviously, you've got some of your pre-hour guys that are making over $700K as well that will add to this total. But in 2024, the money spent on the bullpen was well over $45 million, and they had a team bullpen ERA of 3.32, which was the 3rd best in baseball. Now, again, looking at the numbers specifically, all that can be skewed. In 2024, the starting pitching was so great, so dominant, going so deep into games, you didn't have to use a lot of your bullpens, and that definitely helped. In 2023, Iggy was making 16, Minter making 4.28, Yates was making $6 million, McHugh was making $5 million, Jimenez 2.76, Pierce Johnson 1.85 after coming over. You paid Matzek 1.2, Chavez 1.2. You still were around that $40 million mark and over for the bullpen that year. They had a team bullpen area 3.81, which ranked 11th, still very solid. And then lastly, 2022, Jansen made 16. So you're seeing a theme there with your top guy and the amount that he's making. Iggy made 3.5 coming over in that trade. McHugh made 4. Minter made 2.2. Matzik 1.4. Jay Jackson 1.5. Yates 1. Jackson 3.6. And O'Day 1 million. The total for that year for that group right there was around 35 million. Obviously more with the other guys, the pre-arb and arb guys. But the team ERA that year for the bullpen was 4th best in baseball at 3.03. So that year they really kind of spread it out. But looking at all those years for your core guys, your guys that are making over $1 million, the guys that you're paying to be a big part of your bullpen, you're looking at something in the range of $35 to $40 million. Now, when you actually put the data together, it's much more than that. And after I already put that information together, I checked out SpotRack, and they do this data for you, and they include all the pre-arb and arb guys. But you can look at where the Braves have ranked in terms of money they spent on bullpen. And the Braves had the 6th highest bullpen payroll in 2025. They were 1st in 2024. They were 5th in 23 and 22. They were 5th in 22. They were 5th in 21. They were 1st in 2020. They were 19th, or they were 2nd in 2019, and they were 20th in 2018. So you can see a trend here under Alex Anthopoulos after that first year in 2018, where the Braves kind of made the surprise run. And then that 2019 season, the bullpen was so awful in the first half. And then Alex Anthopoulos made all those trades, Melanson, Green, all those guys, Chris Martin at the deadline. Ever since then, Alex Anthopoulos has made it a priority to spend big on the bullpen. He's been in the top 5 of bullpen payroll since that 2019 season. So I would imagine that's going to continue. And generally when you look at it, the breakdown, as I gave you a minute ago, it's typically one big guy, making around 15 million, a couple of the smaller guys making around 7-8 million, and then a couple more even smaller guys making around 3 or 4 million. That's generally how the money has been broken up in the bullpen. So keep that in mind, because in our second segment here, I'm going to tell you how I break that down and some guys that I would be targeting this offseason. But you already look at it, current options for next year. You already have your 2, middle tier guys in Bummer and Jimenez making 9 and 9.5 million. So you already have over 18 million committed to those 2 guys for 2026. Right now, they currently already have the 5th highest bullpen payroll. Now, that's obviously going to change a lot throughout the offseason. The average team spends about 15 million on their bullpen. Now, obviously, those bullpens aren't good. And you can see from the numbers, the Braves bullpens, ranked 4th, 11th, 3rd. Past year, obviously, things didn't go well. But before that, they were ranking really good among bullpens in all of baseball. So the money is definitely paying off there. But most teams, middle of the pack teams, spend around 15 million on their bullpen. The Braves are already over that for 2026. So let's take a look at the current options. And then, like I said, in the second segment, I'm going to give you my ideal offseason for the bullpen. But right now you have Joe Jimenez, who's already set to make 9 million. Not sure if he'll be ready for the start of the season, which is kind of scary. And even then, how long does it take him to get back up to speed to be in those high leverage situations? Aaron Bummer making 9.5 million, really, really regretting moving that money to 2026 now. Obviously, you were expecting to compete in 2025. You want to give yourself enough flexibility to try to stay under the tax and make some moves if you needed to at the deadline. Turns out they didn't need to make any moves at the deadline. And now you're on the hook for 9.5 million for Aaron Bummer this year, a guy that you don't really utilize in high leverage situations. And I'm not here to argue whether or not that's right or wrong. I do think he deserves a better role and needs to be used more efficiently and effectively, and maybe this regime will do so, especially now if you're paying him $9.5 million. Dylan Lee is making $2 million this year, or projected to make around $2 million this year in arbitration. He's the only real lock to be a high leverage guy to begin the season. Again, we don't know how this regime is going to use Aaron Bummer, and we don't know if Joe Jimenez is going to be ready. So you look at it right now, those 3 guys, you're already 20 million committed to your bullpen for 3 guys. And like I said, only one of them right now you feel pretty confidently is going to be used in a high leverage situation, and you don't have a closer out of that group. Now, Lopez or Holmes, could one of them perhaps, right now it sounds like both of them are going to get a chance to be in the starting rotation. But if one of them needs to slide into the bullpen, takes care of a really big need there. And I think either of those guys could be high leverage relievers. You have Daysbel, who had a pretty bad 2025. He was getting it done early on, but the metrics just weren't there. Then finally the metrics caught up with him. He also had some injuries, the lack of strikeouts. It wasn't the year I was hoping for Daysbel to become possibly that closer. It's closer type stuff. And Carlos Lara, can he throw it close enough to the strike zone? Obviously elite stuff, closer type potential if he can throw enough strikes. Hayden Harris, can he do what he's done in the minors? We didn't really get enough of a look at him when he was up at the big league level. Rody Munoz as well. Can he throw enough strikes? I mean, between Rody, Lara, and Daysbel, it's three guys with really big stuff, back end type stuff. It's just, can they control it enough to be effective? And then Dylan Dodd, who we did get a good look at last year. And when used correctly against righties as a left-handed pitcher, he's better against righties with that cutter. If used correctly, I think he can be a decent reliever and also kind of a bulk guy. So you look at current options right now, there's 3 definite spots with Jimenez, Bummer, and Lee. There's 5 open spots. Now let's just go ahead and consider that one of those spots is going to be taken up by, maybe the likes of Dylan Dodd or Jose Suarez or somebody that can give you length. So there's definitely, I think, 4 holes that need to be addressed in the bullpen this offseason. And how do you get that done? And 20 to 25 million. That's what I'm going to attempt to do here next. The NFL season is back. So is the NBA too. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, being in the bleachers, surrounded by fans, and cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives you the advantage back. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I talk about Game Time all the time. It's the only app that I use whenever I'm getting ready to go to any type of event, not just sports. Maybe it's in the off season. You're like me, you really only care about baseball, but maybe in the off season, you want to take the family to a concert. You can see that right there in the Game Time app. But I do use them all the time. I use them for both the Braves games I went to last year. I've used them this offseason to go to a college football game. It is that easy, and I really do enjoy using it. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. Slowly getting caught up on everything happening around Major League Baseball this offseason. Make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube as well to Locked On Braves or wherever you get your podcast. Got at least 2 more episodes coming your way this week, depending on what all news breaks this week for the Atlanta Braves. Getting back into our discussion of the bullpen, though, we talked about how the Braves have spent in the past, generally around 40 million committed to the bullpen. Usually one big guy at the top, 2 smaller guys at the $8-9 million mark, and then 2 more smaller guys at the $3, $4, $5 million mark. They already have around 20 million committed to the bullpen for 2026. So how do they fill those 3 or 4 spots that are open right now in the bullpen? Here's how I get it done. First move I make is I'm going to get in Devin Williams. 4 years, $68 million is what MLB Trade Rumors has projected. That's around $17 million a year. So that's right in line with what you paid Kenley Jensen, what you paid Raisel Iglesias the past 3 years. So it's right in line with that. But you're getting a younger version. You're getting a 31-year-old. He won't turn 31 until, he just turned 31 in September. He's had an ERA under 2 in 3 straight seasons before getting traded to the Yankees and things just blowing up in New York. It's, again, his first year away from Milwaukee in a tough environment in New York. Maybe that played into it. I don't know. I didn't watch enough Yankees games. I'm sure Yankees fans can tell you what happened. I do know that defense is terrible, and that probably didn't help him much. But you look at the metrics for Devin Williams last year, it still has the makings of a great dominant pitcher. He had almost a 35% strikeout rate last year. He had a 195 expected batting average against, a 314 xSlug, a 3.09 xERA, a 9.7% walk rate, which was, much lower than it's been the last several years. His career, is much higher, is around 11%. And he even got his walk rate down last year. He didn't give a ton of home runs playing in Yankee Stadium. You think that might have been the case? That wasn't really the case. His changeup had a positive run value of 7 with a 194 batting average against and a 37.3% whiff rate. Like I said, I don't know, because I didn't watch all of Devin Williams' starts. I don't know how things just completely fell apart on him. But looking at the data, looking at the metrics, still looks like one of the best relievers in the game. And if you can get that at a discount coming off of a down year for somebody that doesn't have a qualifying offer attached to them, I just think he makes a lot of sense. Now, it's already been reported that the Dodgers are, eyeing Devin Williams. They're going to be targeting Devin Williams. If that's the case, then, adios, see you later. But for me, and how I'm playing this out, I'm going after Devin Williams. I'm going after a guy that I still think, looking at the metrics, can be one of the best closers in baseball. And you can wrap him up for the next 4 years to be your closer at 31 years old. And so I'm absolutely going after Devin Williams if I can at that price. The next move that I'm making is a trade. And I'm going after JoJo Romero of the Cardinals. Now, projected to make around $4.5 million. So this one is a little bit expensive, but I'm going out and getting my shutdown lefty reliever. And Dylan Lee can be that guy for you, but Dylan Lee is good against lefties and righties. And I'm using Dylan Lee, in just a clean inning, full inning type of guy. But I want to get somebody that you got Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper coming up in the same inning. You got a couple of really tough lefties coming up. I'm going and getting my left-handed specialist. JoJo Romero, 29 years old, left-handed pitcher, free agent after 26. So this would be a 1-year rental, but a career 185 average and 529 OPS facing lefties. That's what lefties have done against him. Again, it's my lefty specialist in the bullpen that I'm coming in to just absolutely shut down lefties in a big spot in the game. Like I said, whether it's 7th, 8th inning, maybe you've got a couple of lefties coming up, I'm going and getting JoJo Romero. Maybe you've got a couple of runners on base and the other team has their best left-handed hitter coming up. I'm bringing in JoJo Romero. So that's the second thing that I'm doing. I'm going out and getting a shutdown lefty. Because like I said, Dylan Lee, he's good against lefties and righties. You can certainly use him to try to get out some tough lefties. Aaron Bummer, more kind of a ground ball specialist. Dylan Dodd, he's better against righties. So I know you have a lot of lefties in there already, but I'm getting the one guy that I know can just absolutely has the stuff to shut down lefties. So I'm trading for JoJo Romero. And then next, I'm taking a shot on, Tyler Kinley, Dustin May, Phil Maton, Kirby Yates. Whichever one of those I can get for $2 million, I'm taking a shot on one of those guys. So I know that's only 3 moves. You got 4 holes to fill, but those are the 3 that I'm going after. I'm getting my rock. I'm getting my closer in Devin Williams. I'm getting a lefty specialist in JoJo Romero. And then I'm taking a shot on a lower guy like Tyler Kinley, Dustin May. And I don't know what these guys are going to want. I don't know what Dustin May is going to want to do if he wants to go back through trying to be a starter again. But if I can get Dustin May on a, kind of a prove it deal, $2 million, maybe with some incentives or something like that to be a reliever where if that velocity can tick back up, he's maybe could still be a dominant reliever. Kirby Yates kind of going to bounce back after a rough season. Phil Maton was great. I'd imagine he maybe gets more than $2 million, but I'm taking one of those guys for $2 million and just taking a shot on him to be, my 4th, 5th, 6th guy in the bullpen. So here's what my bullpen would look like. Devin Williams making $17 million. Dylan Lee making $2 million as my 7th, 8th inning guy. Joe Jimenez as well. So I got Williams as my closer at $17 million, and then Dylan Lee and Joe Jimenez as my 7th, 8th inning guys. Hopefully, JoJo Romero as my left-handed specialist, in a big spot, either earlier in the game or, say Jimenez or Lee have trouble and the big lefties coming up. Obviously, if Lee's in there, maybe you leave him in there to face him, but more so if Jimenez is out there, you bring in Romero to get him out. I mean, Lee and Jimenez can both get out righties and lefties, but you get the point. Romero is that guy, just you bring in that big spot to face a lefty, and then you also have Bummer in there making 9.5, Kinley at $2 million. And then I have Daysbel in there just hoping that he can figure it out. And then I have Dylan Dodd to kind of round out the bullpen. So Williams, Lee, Jimenez, Romero, Kinley, Bummer, Daysbel, and Dodd are my bullpen. And I think that's a pretty solid bullpen. I don't know that I necessarily would call it great, but it's definitely better than what they're looking at right now. And that's probably too expensive. Just right there on the guys that you're paying, big money to, that's $45 million. And so that's more than we've seen the Braves spend on the bullpen, for the bulk of it. But I think that's what has to happen in order to, round this bullpen out. Again, that might be too many lefties and, Lee, Romero, Bummer, and Dodd. But like I said, Dodd's better against righties. Bummer, I don't know how they're going to use him. He obviously can be very tough on lefties, but is more so of a guy you're coming in trying to get a ground ball. Dylan Lee, I think it's just he's good against both. And I'm just using him in a clean inning in the 7th or 8th inning or whatever high leverage spot you need to. And Romero just being that lefty that you come in to face the other team's best lefty in the biggest situation in the game. And then you got Williams and Jimenez as, obviously closers and high leverage situation there. Kenley hoping he can regain that magic. Daysbel is somebody in a lower leverage situation until hopefully he can figure things out. And Dodd just kind of that bulk guy or somebody you want to come and you face against some righties. Again, if they're using him correctly in that situation. So I think it's a pretty solid bullpen. It is an expensive bullpen, but it's where you have positioned yourself. Now, some other ways they could try to do this is you probably try to move Bummer and as much of that $9.5 million as you can. And then maybe you get two of Kenley and May and Maton and Yates of that group. If you could move Aaron Bummer's money and you could spend, say you save $2 or $3 million on it. And you use that to then go get two more relievers that you feel are just as good as Aaron Bummer. And again, Aaron Bummer is such a weird case. Could you look at the metrics for him? It seems like he should be one of the better relievers, but for whatever reason, when he's out there, things just seem to happen. And the Braves have just never used him in that way. So it all just depends on how the Braves actually view Aaron Bummer and how they're going to use him. But that is something else you could do. You could try to move Aaron Bummer and as much as that money as possible, split it up and maybe go get two guys of similar value. On top of this, in addition to this, I'm also looking to sign some veterans on minor league deals. Basically what they did last offseason, going and getting the Hector Neris's of the world, the Angel De Los Santos's of the world. I'm going and signing several of those guys as well to just see what happens in spring training and see if maybe they can take a spot, catch fire, something like that. You always want to do that in addition and hope, because generally one of those guys are going to pop off. The Nick Andersons, who's, had a really good run here for the Braves after signing I believe it was a minor league deal or something close to that, finding those guys too that could hopefully contribute at some point, still doing a lot of that. And then another option is that if you didn't do Devin Williams, maybe you didn't want to spend quite as big on that closer and maybe you wanted to try to split that up. You could potentially sign Iggy for $13 million and Pete Fairbanks for $9 million. That's even more expensive. But if you wanted to split it up and make the bullpen even deeper, maybe you don't go for the big ticket in the Devin Williams and maybe you split it up with a couple of guys, for around $8-9 million. And you just have, more depth, but maybe you don't have that, that one true rock in your bullpen, which Iggy could be that. I'm not saying that he can't, but Iggy's also, 12-13 million probably. What you're going to have to pay for him. So there's a couple of different ways that you could do it, but I'm going out. I'm getting that rock. I'm getting Devin Williams. I'm pairing it with Dylan Lee. I'm hoping Joe Jimenez is fine and that he's Joe Jimenez again. I'm going and getting that lefty specialist. And then I'm bringing Kenley back or somebody like that to kind of fill out the bullpen at a lower cost. I'm hoping that Aaron Bummer is used correctly. I'm hoping that Dylan Dodd used correctly. And I'm hoping that Daysbel, figures things out. There's a lot of hope in there. Certainly. It's not a great spot for this bullpen, but there is a way to make it work and make it work within the framework of what you've done in the past and how you spent on the bullpen. All right, next, I'm going to get into a comment from Alex Anthopoulos about the bullpen and how he's going to attack it this offseason. We'll also get into the coaching hires as that has been finalized now, all that coming here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Checking out FanDuel.com right now. The Atlanta Braves still, their odds are actually dropping now. They're at plus 2,200, so their odds are getting worse at the moment for winning the World Series next year. I don't know what happened for that to take place. The NBA right now, the NBA Finals favorites are the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Hawks, they continue to kind of slide as well on that side of things. They're at plus 4,500 now to win the NBA Finals. You can see all that on FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Alex Anthopoulos, an interesting comment on Tuesday that I want to share here because it's relevant to our discussion. But Alex Anthopoulos said the Braves need to add a lot of relievers, but for now have prioritized shortstop and starting pitcher. Quote said, "We're going to focus on those spots. We'll see where those lead us, what the acquisition costs are and all that, and then we'll turn our attention to the bullpen." So kind of what we figured when we saw them decline the options of Pierce Johnson and Tyler Kinley, that they were just, gathering all their assets, getting as much money as they can put together to go out and first prioritize the more expensive needs in shortstop and starting pitcher. Couple of things here, though, that don't sit well with me is one, that a big bat's not mentioned. Getting a starting pitcher, getting a shortstop, getting a lot of relievers is the bare minimum for me this offseason. And you do all those things, then yes, I think you have a contender, but that's the minimum. That's just filling holes. You have a hole at shortstop you need to fill. You have 4 holes in the bullpen you need to fill. You don't necessarily have a hole in the rotation, but you need depth there. That's the bare minimum that you have to do just to field a team next year. I don't want the bare minimum this offseason. I want more than that. And so for me, hearing him or not hearing him say that they also want to go after another bat is a bit disappointing. I'm like, if they fill all these holes and they fill them with good players, just depending on who it is, obviously my excitement level can be raised. But if they just fill these holes, they go get Ha-Seong Kim, they go get a Chris Bassett for starting pitcher, and they go just get some middle reliever type arms for the bullpen. Although I'm sure at least one of them is going to be even if they do that, you get Ha-Seong Kim, you get Chris Bassett, you get Raisel Iglesias to be your closer, you get another middle reliever. You trade for JoJo Romero. Even if you do the things that I said for the bullpen, that's a good offseason. Not bad by any means, but you're just plugging the holes that you have. You're not going that step further. You're not doing the Dodgers and the Mets thing of, hey, we're a great team, let's go be a greater team. I didn't mean to get on my soapbox here, but that's been my frustration with this current run for the Atlanta Braves is, yes, you did a great job building a foundation, and then you just kind of had coasted. You've never done anything to put that team over the top, to go get that next bat, to really put them over the top, to go spend that extra money to get a good shortstop or a better outfielder. Look, I love Alex Anthopoulos. I think he's a great general manager. I'm not one of those Braves fans right now that just want to get rid of him, but I am a little bit critical in the fact that he's really just kind of coasted. And how much is that is him? How much of that is the ownership group limiting him? I don't know. But again, that's going to be my frustration at the end of this offseason. Yeah, you could go make some good moves to fill those holes that you have. Like I don't think it's going to happen, but you go get Corey Seager for shortstop. Okay, you get your shortstop and a big bat. So, that fills both needs. But you just get Ha-Seong Kim, you just get Chris Bassett, you just fill your bullpen up. That's the bare minimum you need to do this offseason, in my opinion. But getting into the rest of the coaching staff that was announced, you have Walt Weiss with 8 new guys. Tim Hires is back as the hitting coach. Eddie Perez back as a coach, major league coach, is his official label. You have Tony Mansolino to be the bench coach, was going to be the third base coach, is moved now to the bench coach. 43 years old, was the third base coach and interim coach for the Orioles. Jeremy Hefner, the pitching coach, 39 years old, was the Mets pitching coach for the last 6 seasons. JP Martinez, the bullpen coach, 43 years old, was the Giants pitching coach last year and the assistant pitching coach before that. Anton Richardson will be the first base coach, 42 years old, first base coach for the Mets the last 2 seasons, and was in that same spot for the Giants for 4 years. Tommy Watkins, one of the newer ones announced, will be the third base coach, 45 years old, third base coach with the Twins for the last 4 years. as well. Dustin Garneau will be the catching coach. 38 years old, was the bullpen coach for the Rockies last year. Helped catchers at various levels with game planning, which I like to read that because I like the game planning aspect of it, certainly from the catchers side of things. I would love to see some more game planning from the hitters side of things going forward. Darnell Coles, maybe he'll help with this. He was the assistant hitting coach for the Nationals, 12 years as a major league hitting coach, been with the Nats for the last 4 years, the oldest member of the staff at 63. And then Tony Diaz will be a coach as well, 48 years old, has worked in various roles, including an infield instructor. So maybe he'll be the one coaching the defense. We'll have to see. I'm still not sure who that's going to be at this point. And then Chipper will remain a special assistant. He said himself on the radio the other day he's going to be much more involved this year. Now, some news from around baseball. A lot of talk about Ketel Marte. Had a lot of people ask me, are the Braves going to trade for him? Like, the person who reported that he was going to get traded, I don't necessarily trust a lot. And I've already had somebody else say that I do trust more, that it's not very likely that Ketel Marte is going to be traded. So, until that actually picks up a little bit more, I'm not really buying into the Ketel Marte trade market discussion. David Fletcher announced his retirement. So there's that. Brewers will listen on Freddie Peralta, but will likely take a lot. He's making just $8 million. When they traded Corbin Burns, he was set to make nearly $16 million that year. Brewers obviously done a great job continuing to compete. I can't imagine they're going to give up such a great value like that. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for joining me on today's episode. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.